it's a good opportunity. Build a bridge if we can. I wonder if I should bring the map that we have, the drawing that we have that shows all the projects. I think I got.
I have a large one.
Can
Well,
I?
Mike has a large one.
Can I get one
Mine
of
are
those?
on the wall now.
Oh, did you frame them and put them
I
on your
framed
wall?
them. New
So you
office.
wanna take mine?
Yeah, if you've got a spare one,
No, I'll just let you take it. and-
I like to
I'm
put
gonna
that
go
on the
get it
table
now.
so everybody understands
Okay,
what's
good.
happening. It's kind of a striking thing to see the map,
Mm-hmm.
and I know it's sobering for me to see the transformation. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, Mike brought those in my office. I said, what is this?
Well,
Okay.
do we
Time?
need to do anything before Bill
Gotta
jumps
open
in?
the meeting.
I call the meeting to order. Boom.
Good work. So far, so good.
I'll retire undefeated.
Do we have a quorum, and do we know what a quorum is? Quorum is 5 members who are appointed, plus the alternates. So who are the appointed members? Okay, so we have 5. We have a quorum. That was my first couple of questions when we're doing the solar projects. The county is always, when they do their 239 review, they're always going to say solar is inconsistent with our policy on prime soils. And they're going to say, we recommend that you do not approve the project, at least from everything I've seen. Every one of them has come back that way.
Yeah.
I mean, we too have a prime soils term in our local law. But it basically, it's something to be considered. There's not a yes or no type of issue associated with it. And just, kind of, the prime soils thing has always resonated in my head, but in a different way. I thought of it initially as sort of a euphemism for farming. This is farming on prime soils is the highest and best use of the land. But Mr. Washoe, in one of our conversations here in this room, said, well, no, prime soils have a biological component to them. There's soil biology that makes the nutrients available, and it's a living thing. And I really like that. And I really like that, and I'm going to use that in our 94C discussions.
Oh boy, radical stuff.
Well,
It's nice to hear.
I was in the biology department way back when, so it resonated with me. And once you kill that biology by covering it with solar panels or not using it, can you ever recover it again?
Some would say
The opposite.
the opposite, like you're putting the solar panels and you're not disturbing the, once it
You're gonna increase
recovers,
the soil.
you're actually gonna
protecting it.
increase the
If
soil
you don't
health.
feed it, is it going to be healthy?
Yes.
Yeah, cause it won't be compressed and it
Oh,
won't
don't
be.
tell me that,
Yeah,
because this is my
yeah.
favorite argument right now.
No.
It's gonna
panels,
be,
the-
the soil's
Yeah.
gonna be way better than having it tilled up
Mm-hmm.
with chemical fertilizers
Driven over.
and
And
Roundup put on
herbicides.
it up every year.
Oh,
Impressed.
baby, that's a big issue.
Well, I think we need to go back to what were the line items that delineate prime. Somebody made this designation of prime soils. What was that designation based on?
Plus, there's a big difference
Soil
if they're gonna
it's
do
pretty well
grading
defined science for the most
and
part.
Yeah.
move the topsoil
But,
versus are they just gonna put the posts in?
Yeah.
Cause when you start grading, then you are messing up the soil.
I understand that, Cody,
Yeah.
but I mean, you talk to, any one of the local farmers going to tell you better about how their soils produce than any mapping or somebody that looks at it from,
It's not absolute by any means.
right. But I'm
So-
just saying, like, I think we can all agree that we felt good about the first several that we, said yes to, with the Mead Road being the one that we don't feel good about, being that it had a stand of good corn. Like, that was a productive plot of land versus the other 3 that are marginal hayland.
Well, and I also, the other side, I also hear every farmer that's coming in wanting to lease their land, saying, that's not prime, I can
That's
only
fair.
grow
Right,
bad
that's
hay
fair.
on it, it's not even, not even good for that. I mean, it's the same,
That's fair.
voicing that every time.
Mhm.
And
Except for the Mead
after a
Road.
while, it begins to lose its resonance with me, when I hear the
Understood.
same
Yeah.
phrase every time.
I mean, as an owner of poor hayland myself at different times, I can definitely understand the argument.
Yeah. Yeah, I can too.
Well, I guess I'll have to go back and rethink my prime soils argument. I am actively looking for somebody in academia who would have a deep knowledge of soil sciences that I could talk to and try to.
That would be Kitty, but she's
Uh-huh.
on the county planning.
So that
What's her name?
Kitty O'Neill. She's our soils and forage person, expert at, she has a PhD at
And-
Cornell
And
Extension.
there's a gal at Soil and Water Conservation I talked to about this.
Did you talk to Rayanne or
Yes,
Giovanna?
Yeah, Rianne.
Rayanne.
What's her last name?
Delansky.
I'd say
Delancey?
Decker, but it's Delancey.
So Rianne Delancey, she's at Soil and Water, and she's pretty up on prime soil.
Yep.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
And Bob's, I feel Bob is a good, a source of information on soil. He took his place, he took
Uh-huh.
a virtual desert, and now it's
Very productive.
cornucopia. It produces
Yeah, just
like big
his
time.
one, one reference on it just set me off on a course.
He knows a
I
lot
hope it
about
don't
it.
crash and burn.
Well,
I
it
really
is
like-
definitely a living
Uh-huh.
thing.
Really like that argument.
Well, I heard a saying within the last few months, delving into regenerative ag, soil without biology is geology.
Ooh, nice.
I loved it.
Yeah, it is good.
So I was hoping that we could go back and take a look at the things that have been done on solar, one by one, and just confirm with you that we're good with where we stand right now. My concerns were quorum. Did we have a quorum for each one of these decisions?
Question on that. On the,
Yep.
the quorum, since there's 5 members on the planning board, one of the alternates, would a quorum constitute only 3 be present?
No. A quorum is a majority. So for situations like solar,
Mm.
we need a supermajority. So we
But-
need
If the
quorum
county-
plus 1.
But only if the county
Turns it down.
denies that particular project.
That's correct. So for normal business, 3.
Boom. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Same page.
And I guess that brings the other question is, if you're here as an alternate and there isn't a quorum, can you vote? Can you cast a vote to sit in? And you know what? I'm sitting here. I didn't research that question.
I thought
To-
that was the purpose of the alternate.
I thought so too.
Yeah.
And I think there is in town of Canton land use regs for the planning board makeup. If that's the case, I believe the chair has to make that a motion.
At the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, to enter into the minutes if there's an alternate.
It's in the law.
Yeah, it's in our local law.
Well, thank you. You guys know your procedure. That's
To a degree.
that's
I was gonna say,
that's
news
important.
to me.
But we didn't follow it.
No.
Well, okay. So
Didn't know it till after it was.
okay.
after we
Well,
didn't follow it.
then we sit here ready to proceed. So I just want to walk through each one of these projects that have been approved, and just review whether or not we need to go back and revise the resolution or revisit the resolution. I'm generally opposed to that for one reason. For planning board decisions, the statute of limitations to challenge it is 30 days. For the seeker part of the work that you do, it's 4 months. So when we have something that we've already done and it's good and we don't have any issues with it, I want to keep it that way. I want the benefit of that statute of limitations. And I'll skip ahead to Mead Road, where I argued with their council yesterday. They want to make changes to the resolution that you've approved, and understanding that opens the project up. So that's at the end of the agenda, but
Okay.
that's why I'm generally reluctant to go back and make changes unless it's something that we're going to have a fight over with the developers. The other kind of procedural thing I wanted to talk about is that the way we've generally been proceeding, the folks at BNL do the review, they put together the resolution and they send it through generally a day before, maybe even the day of, and we don't share it with the developer until after it's been approved. And that's proven to be kind of a pain in the neck, because they call me the next day and say, well, I didn't think the comma ought to go there, it ought to go over here. So I'm spending time kind of reviewing their changes. In my mind, if council's going to have an objection, I'd rather know before you make your decision. And I'd rather have a consensus document. Because, again, you meet, you make a decision, and then the clock starts to tick. And we get some comfort from the fact that 30 days later, they can't sue us over your decision. They'll sue us on seeker until 4 months have gone by, but you've done an excellent job on seeker. And look, I asked the opposing counsel, how do you feel? And most all of them have said, we really like the way you do seeker. It's really detailed. We don't think that it could be successfully challenged. So kudos to you for the time you put in on the seeker review. And that's from people who have a similar interest to us. They want it to be bulletproof. They don't want some third party to come in and challenge and win. So I take their advice seriously. So everybody is happy with the seeker process on every one of these. Nobody has come to me and said, I don't think you did it right, or you could have done something better. And on Mead Road, where we did the extra supplementary work, they really like that as well. The seeker process, from a lawyer's perspective, it's a series of steps, it's a process, and if at the end of that process somebody challenges it and they win, you go back to the beginning and you do it over again. So it's what I think of as a procedural statute. So as long as we follow the procedure, we do the kinds of things that you've been doing, a detailed and careful review, and we record it so we have a record of it, we're in good shape. If anybody should sue on that, and in my experience, that's the battleground. The seeker is always the area where we have a fight. If somebody is seriously opposed, they're going to take out the book and they're going to sue on seeker. If they're really upset, they may sue on your decision as well as the seeker, but they've only got 30 days to do that. So
Oh, I thought you said it was 4 months.
4 months for seeker, 30 days for your decision.
Oh,
Is there a section of the seeker that you see more litigation coming from than other areas of the seeker?
The basic tenet for seeker is that you take a hard look. So you're always going to get a claim that you didn't take a hard look. And so when you do a detailed analysis, like a long form or a supplementary, and you look at all of those issues, you discuss those issues, and that's all in the record, it's really hard for them to prevail on that argument. So that's why having spent more time and more detail is better for defending your decision.
I got that. I was just wondering if there was one section that you're seeing other places get sued on a more regular basis that maybe we want to be sure that we spend that extra time on those sections
Whether it's
so that we don't
endangered
have
species
that.
or wetlands
or historic, right, or
You guys already know what the top issues are. I mean, it's archaeological. I have a client that has a landfill in the middle of an Oneida Indian village, built on top of a village. And honestly, for 30 years, I've litigated with the nation over those villages and how to properly protect them. So archaeological is a huge thing in certain places. I don't know so much about here in Canton, but because I don't know the archaeology here, but it can be a dead stop to your project. cumulative impacts are another kind of an odd thing. In the law, you're supposed to think about not just your decision, but the totality of it. So if you're going to build a shopping center, you have to think about all the things that go into that. Does it have water? Does it have sewer? Does it create traffic, et cetera, and so forth? So there can be cumulative arguments. And for your projects, endangered species, you know, there was one meeting that we had where the engineers for the applicant, I can't remember which one it was, said, "Oh, we'll deal with DEC on that, and you know, they'll eventually just give up." And I sat in my chair and I said, "Good luck with that." They're not. I mean, if there's an endangered species in evidence, you're going to have to do studies. You're going to have to prove that they are nesting, et cetera, and so forth. So if I were coming to the table for the other side, trying to interrupt your process, I'd be looking hard for endangered species. When I heard about the blanding turtle,
Right.
I thought, "Oh no, this is
Brown
going to
bat.
come up."
Harriers.
The
What's
Indiana
the
brown
bird
bat.
out
The
on 310?
Harriers. Yeah, the Harriers.
You know, so, but
Wren.
But you need evidence. You can't just say, "Oh, we're concerned about that." You know, you need evidence. Eagles' nests are another one of those. So those are sort of the typical battleground areas, and I think whenever there's something like that comes to the table, that's something you want to look at very carefully. You want to make sure your hard look is documented. So. You know, I think they can also attack the process, and that is, you know, whether or not you had a quorum, whether or not, you know, the procedural requirements were met for the work that you do. And I'm very happy with the way you do business. And I think B&L is very good at the way they put their documents together. There's lots of evidence in here that helps us to fend off those kinds of claims. So my advice is let's continue on doing things the way that they've been done. I particularly like the way that you guys talk about the seeker issues and the way you discuss them, and you know, go back to the guidance documents when there's a question about it. Mrs. Backus was very good at that and extraordinarily good at that. So that's a lesson you should take forward. That, you know, those when you have a question, go back to your guidance documents and see if you can produce an answer on the basis of those. Any other general questions on that stuff? Because we're still talking about planning board, the county planning board. Have we seen any that weren't disapproved?
Yes,
Just one, right?
one,
Which one?
In the town?
676, Old DeKalb.
The old DeKalb Road one
Ah,
was approved by the county.
But, with that said, we all have the list from 2014 of all the solar projects the county has looked at. They've approved every one until the 1st of 2022.
Sounds about right.
Well, I was watching the meetings they had, but they started to figure out this prime farmland business, and there was a couple of people that spoke out about prime farmland and kept denying the project, and the rest of the planning board, and I think I have this right, approved them. But then the rest of them came around. They really wrangled this thing. They spent quite a bit of time.
A lot of it, though, I think, came from a directive from the actual county legislature
Yes.
Okay.
that told them no more.
Or say
They
no
used-
more on prime.
They used the prime
farmland.
farmland as a
Yes.
a tool to implement policy.
The legislature did, yes.
But it wasn't hard and fast. It was advisory that they encourage, like that's in the town of Canton solar law and many other towns in the county, you know, encouraging landowners to not use prime soil for this kind of use. And the county legislature made the same claim. They didn't. It wasn't a local law that they drafted by any means to thwart that kind of use, but it was more so an advisory piece like we've seen in recent past.
There's a thing called political cowardice. So you can hide behind certain issues to try to implement your policy. Mrs. Backus asked me through Mike about that with respect to prime soils under the town law. And I looked at it and I said, it's policy. It's not yes or no. Prime soils means no, no prime soils means yes. It's policy. It's to be interpreted as part of your review. So if you were to say to a particular project, we're not going to approve it because of prime soils, because of the presence of prime soils on the site, you really don't have any backup in the law. You're arguing on the basis of all the evidence presented, we don't believe this meets the standard. I've been thinking about a way to kind of explain this situation. Because I've also written some things that say the planning board's discretion is limited. And here's the way I think it can be explained. If I'm coming to the table as an applicant to build a house, and there are a set of rules around how I need to build that house, things that a planning board sees on a regular basis, I have an expectation as a citizen that if I meet the requirements of the law, the setbacks, all the other things, that I'm entitled to a permit. I have a right to that permit. I have a property right to that permit. So when a solar project comes in, if it meets all the requirements, then your discretion to say, no, I just don't like it, or I don't like the fact that it's on prime soils, it's limited.
On not necessarily the contrary, but the residential piece, apples to oranges to the commercial use. The residential piece is protected with it being exempt from site plan review right from the get-go.
Yeah, but there are site plans that are going to come to you that are, say, for a commercial building where there is some site plan review that you do. So the bottom line on all that is you make a decision in good faith, you make a determination, and the applicant is unhappy. So within 30 days they file a lawsuit saying your decision was arbitrary and capricious. So arbitrary and capricious means exactly what it says. There's no basis in law for your decision. So that's why we rely heavily on the documentation, on the discussion, on your deliberations on the decision that you made. Because if there's a record that says, no, we considered that, we debated it, we determined that it was not in the town's best interest to make that decision, it's not arbitrary and capricious. And there's a whole body of law on what arbitrary and capricious is in each particular circumstance. So I really feel confident that the way you've done things, it would be very difficult for somebody to come in, take this resolution and your determination and say, well, that was completely arbitrary. It's a very high bar for the challenger to get a judge to say, and then of course it gets appealed. And the same is really true for, say, a neighbor. Take solar, for example. Not likely that the applicant is going to sue. It's more likely that some neighbor or some person or group is going to come in and say, no, your decision to approve a solar project is arbitrary and capricious. And that's when we turn back to our documentation and our process to defend against that allegation. And I'm the guy that has to do that, and I feel pretty good about the way you've been doing things. So I'd say stay the course on the way that you debate and the way you document. And just remember, every time a solar project comes to the table that the county has disapproved, you got to have your supermajority.
But Bill, we haven't disapproved the project yet.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, and to that point, I think there has been certainly a feeling in here that we have to work to the law, and that our own personal opinions about whether there should be a solar farm there, I mean, we certainly haven't been arbitrary and capricious with Mead Road, because we spent hundreds of hours on Mead Road. But we came down to, within the law, they've met the standard. And therefore, we approved it. Some of us very
Whether-
reluctantly.
Whether you personally like it or not,
Right.
you make the determination, does it meet the requirements of the law? And if it does, then you approve. I mean, that's fundamental planning board law, is that people are entitled to build their projects as long as they conform to the requirements. Now, you may say, and I've heard it said in some of the public hearings, well, the local law doesn't deal with this, the local law isn't strong enough there. You know, fine. You know, those things go to Mary Ann and her board to determine we should amend the local law to deal with this, this, and this. I mean, the town board could have said, we will not approve solar projects on prime soils. And then you would have had a way to say
Right.
yes or no.
Yeah.
They didn't say that. They said you can consider it. It's a factor. But without giving you that explicit power to say it's on prime soils, you've got to move it, your discretion is pretty limited.
Well, I think ultimately what it came down to was the fact that they weren't removing anything. You know, they were all pile driven, you know, so ultimately, you know, regardless of our discussion about whether or not they will in fact be decommissioned, they're not a high impact on the soil, because theoretically in 30 years it could all come out and it could be.
Yeah, and the
Compared to
whole
housing
fallacy
development.
that this is a 20-year or 30-year project is it's bedeviling me,
Amen.
because I don't believe it for a minute,
Mhm.
for all the reasons that we've discussed. But we have to work with what we have as the framework for our analysis, and you've done that. And you know, when you cast your vote, it's, does this application meet the requirements in front of me
Today.
Mhm.
That's right.
Well, and that's the whole, you know, the waste disposal, you know, like we had, you know, no one can see 25 years down the road, but it's today, as of today, they're willing to take it, which bugs me, but
Well, we have to
what
go
do you
on.
do about that, you know?
Yeah, you know, I spent a long time representing landfills, county landfills, and Madison County has been my long-standing client, and they were the first to have a wind farm in New York State. So they were the first to have windmills that were beyond their useful life. And they came to the landfill and said, can we bury our blades? Because we're replacing the blades, we're replacing the nacelles. And, you know, the staff went crazy trying to figure out how we bury this big thing. Spent a lot of time, and then they went
What are
back.
those made of?
They're fiberglass.
Oh, okay,
They're a composite.
okay.
And they went back and said, well, here's what it's going to cost. And then the developer said, oh, we found a place to ship them out of state where they'll be recycled.
Lovely. Full stop.
And we can't control the movement of recyclable materials. So whether they are recycled or whether they're sitting in a field somewhere, your guess is as good as mine. So there, I mean, I understand completely your argument that, but here's what I think about solar. When they're done with their useful life, they still work.
Right.
So what I've seen, and I've got a business in South Asia, they take those old panels, and it's enough to run a light bulb, and out in the boonies, that's all they need, or to run a little refrigeration unit. There's a second life for those things. So I don't think recycling it's likely. I think it's a third party market where whatever is left of the life they will use.
Plus, the racks are there, and if they want to replace the panels, take them out, do what you just said,
But that's
put
it.
new ones in.
Right, but there's and again, the cost, you know, nobody can, you know, foresee 25 years down the road, but I'm thinking in terms of like defending our decision to, you know, the people with this argument, you know, we're revisiting this, it's 3 or 5 years, every 3 or 5 years that the numbers are revisited and updated.
Right.
For the O&M,
Good question.
Yeah, I think it's 5 years.
I thought it was 3, and then I heard 5.
I'm pretty
So
sure
I think
it's
it's
It's one of
5.
those numbers. It's one
Yeah.
of, it's either 3 or
Yeah.
5.
Yeah, but it's
in the
revisited,
document,
and the numbers are adjusted,
Mhm.
you know, periodically.
Right.
do you have a question?
I don't wanna take up much of your time, cause I know you gotta go and you have a full agenda, but as far as records management, all the decisions that are made at this level, our town clerk is legally responsible for all records of the town. And so, my question is, should all the minutes be going to the town clerk? Should, Mike, gives Heidi the resolutions, but then there was a question on one of them, and, Heidi came to me, is like, well, they're changing this resolution, do I need to do another one, do they need to rescind this one? So, I think as far as procedure and records management, that, to me, especially with the solar, that's huge, especially if we're gonna get challenged. So, if you could just think about that, or maybe,
I've thought about the ones that we've done, and I'm not gonna recommend any changes. So what we've
so
done.
where are all the records of all the decisions? And should they be given to the town clerk, is my question.
My understanding is that when you've made a decision and you've passed this resolution, Mike, it goes into a book, right?
Yeah.
The only thing I would change about the way you do that is to put a file stamp on it.
Right.
Because that question came up with regard to Mead Road, because somebody had come in and told somebody in the town hall they were gonna sue. So I was trying to figure out what is the date at which we're beyond that statute of limitations. And we got the approved resolution, and we know when it was put in the book, but it should administratively put a stamp on it.
So
that-
Mike should give the resolution to Heidi, which you've been.
Which I've been doing,
Right,
yeah.
but what about the minutes?
The minutes.
All of that, because if we are being challenged, I can see it now. Where's the records of everything, right?
Yeah.
Well, and the minutes are pretty complete.
Oh, I'm sorry?
The minutes are really complete too, cause she writes down all of our discussions
And you
She
record
does a
it.
great job,
Oh, yeah, she
but I'm
does.
just wondering,
They
should
should
they
be
be
kept.
given
They should be
to the
kept.
town clerk?
And no less than 6 years. So
Right,
in terms of statute of limitations on any possible claim that could be made,
mhm,
beyond 6 years, it's mostly financial types of things.
okay, so we gotta make sure that happens, that
They
it
should
all
be
goes to
kept.
Heidi.
Now, they can be kept electronically.
Right.
So they, you don't have to have paper
Yeah.
copies. But we've also received FOIL requests from people who are interested. And so we go back to the records and we have to pull them out. So
Okay,
the fact that she's also the records keeper and the FOIL person,
Manager, yeah.
so she should have command of all
Okay.
those things.
so we'll follow up with that,
Yeah.
thank you.
I'd like to move on in the interest of time. So I went through and I looked at Soul America, TJA, Grass River, and Mead Road. And I went back through the resolutions and I looked at supermajority, and I think we're fine on all those documents. Mead Road, even though you've made a decision, you signed it, the 30 days have just passed, their council wants to make changes. And I was on the phone with them for an hour yesterday, arguing over the changes. Boils down to this. They know that they need to do management of the vegetation. You've specified vegetative buffers. You've put into the resolutions funding to have people go out and check the buffers. And their argument is those 3 paragraphs where all of that is set forth duplicate the O&M plan, which has the same requirements. And I'm willing to entertain a change to that document as long as there's money for somebody to go out and look at the vegetation, and they're required in their O&M plan to report back to you that the vegetation's okay. Because I've done this for a long time, that's the thing that becomes a problem down the road. Is the vegetation dies, the deer eat it, it doesn't perform the way it should be, and they're responsible to make sure that it does. So we need to hold them accountable for that, and we need funding for people to go out and make sure that that gets taken care of. So if they're insistent upon taking those 3 paragraphs and putting all of that into one, I'm going to entertain it as a change, and I'm going to propose it to you for your consideration.
If it's simply redundant, why take it out?
yeah, why do we have to change it?
because we have the benefit of the statute of limitations, was my argument. Why are we doing this?
But what's their benefit by taking?
Money. They think
How do they benefit financially by removing something that they say is already in another document?
They say that they're going to have their own people go out and check the vegetation. They have an
No,
obligation to do
I don't like
Yeah,
that.
I don't like that either.
That doesn't
No.
really
Part of
sound
their
like
own
them.
M plan. And I said, no, we want to have our own resources to be able to do that. So if you want to rewrite it so that the money is there, the obligation is there, and you report back, then I'll propose it to the board. I don't like it
I don't like it.
because we've already decided. Look, it's your decision.
Yeah.
I will.
What happens if we tell them no? They have to live with it.
They at this point they can't sue you because the 30 days has passed. Look,
Does the
I'm your
clock start
counsel.
again?
Hmm?
If we make this change, does the clock start again on
Yes,
it?
it does.
Oh,
Yes, it does.
Good question.
Yes, it does. So I'm generally reluctant to make the change. And I'm going to bring back whatever they produce, and we'll put it on the table for your review and consideration. The statute of limitations is an issue, and for that project specifically, they've also got a traffic issue that they haven't resolved yet.
Yeah.
So
and that they're trying to change.
they're trying. Now, I talked to them yesterday, and they said that they might move the entrance so that there's a different sight line that they think DOT might be okay with. So it's their problem. Let them solve it and come back to you with how they think it should be resolved. So at the end of the day, you've approved that project, you put conditions on it. Whether you want to make a change or not is up to you. I will joust with these folks to try to get in front of you the things that they want. And this is why I go back to, I could have had that fight with them before you decided. And I would prefer to do that so that you're getting the work product from those negotiations rather than endangering your statute of limitations later on. So I would much rather give them the resolution that we're proposing to put in front of you and fight it out beforehand so that you're looking at a consensus document.
So what you're proposing, Bill, and I'm not speaking on behalf of B&L, they would have, hypothetically, if we were having a meeting Monday night for a possible approval, we would like the approval resolution a week ahead,
Yeah, exactly.
to have it a week ahead. I mean, I agree with you.
Well, they don't always have the final work product either.
Right.
So where there is time, where they've got the site plan and it's final and they've got time to do that.
Yeah.
I've talked to them and they're generally, we don't want anybody to mess with our stuff. Well, okay, but I think that
Neither do we.
right. So I would rather have the fight before it sits on the table for your consideration, so that we don't have to go back. That once you've made the decision, that's it. And there's some finality to it.
I
So
think
we
all
have a few
thought
more.
There was finality to
Yeah,
it.
I mean, I thought we'd finally.
Well,
And
a lot
it may well be. And look, the lawyers get paid to argue, and their client, wants to try to save a buck.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, fine. I'll argue with you, and I'll present it, and you'll make your decisions.
Now, just you bringing it back, does that start any clock, or is that?
No,
Okay.
no, it's your
We'd
decisions
have
that
to reopen that.
it's your decisions that make the clock tick. So, if I brought back Mead Road, put it on the table, and you decided to make the changes that they're requesting, then you would essentially be redoing your resolution, and the clock would start to tick. Both clocks would start to tick.
But if
The
we,
seeker and the resolution.
but if we were to decline it, we would stand with our original decision, and the clock would remain
Yes.
with the original decision.
Yes.
So is this a gizmo to get the clock to go again?
They could-
Well spoken, John.
that's possible, but what benefit do they get
I don't know.
to suing the town when you've given them a site plan approval and a special use permit?
Especially
and
when
the
we give
kind
it
of
to them
things-
reluctantly.
The things that they're talking about, money-wise, are drop in the bucket
Right.
compared
Yeah,
with the
but some of
overall
the-
project.
Mr. Buchanan shared the paperwork with me, and a lot of it is just wording. Commas here, adding the word special use permit approval, where we only have site plan approval. We're also, so it's a lot of it is wording.
And those kinds of things, I'd rather get out of the way ahead of time. I mean, if they feel like you didn't approve the site plan, or you approved the site plan but you didn't approve the special use permit, do we really have a special use permit? I mean, that's a fair question.
And then in the minutes?
I think you covered it, but it's not in the resolution. So can we put it in the resolution and pass it again? We've already done that. We've already done that for Grass River. They had a bunch of editorial comments. I sent them to Mike. He laid them on the table, and you guys looked at it and said, well, yeah, okay, we'll make those changes. But I would rather do that ahead of time. I'd rather get that out of the way before you ever see the resolution.
I understand.
So how do we do that?
Emotions.
I mean,
So we ask B&L to do their work a week ahead. And then
sometimes we already are asking them to do stuff pretty quickly.
we've got 3 left, Northwoods, the Russell, and the DeKalb Road. So on those, if we have the opportunity to share that with council before you get it, I'd like to do that.
Mhm.
On these other ones, Mead Road's the only one that's up in the air right now. I'd hope to be able to bring to you tonight the actual document to look at, to make a decision on, but they weren't ready. They weren't ready.
Really?
So,
Well, we have
Surprising.
Nickerson Road coming up on Monday.
They
No.
think we're hard to work with.
Oh,
No.
No.
I'll talk about that later.
Oh.
So Bill, if they change the resolution, do you have to rescind the other one?
yeah.
Because it goes to numbering for Heidi.
Yeah, so, there's, administratively, it's not convenient to go back and change it. And it's not legally, it opens us up, for that, Now, obviously with Mead Road, I was very concerned about wanting to open it up again. And I explained to them, the statute of limitations runs in the 29th of December, and I'd rather not reopen it. And then I said, talk to your clients, explain it to them, and they said, no, we absolutely think these are important changes for our client.
For their client, what's the benefit for us? Like, other than looking like we're considering.
The benefit for you ostensibly is a better resolution.
Okay.
Better in the sense that it's clearer, I guess.
That's
I-
not, that's
I-
not convincing.
But this is the Mead Road
Yeah.
approval
Yes.
resolution. It doesn't say a special use permit was approved. That's not in the language. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's dicey.
So, look, they're not completely wrong, and
Okay.
it's not black and white. I mean, look, they're good lawyers. They're saying I could perceive a problem here, and we could solve it with this language. Well, I want the best process. I'm here to defend your decision. So if we left a word out that the word ought to be in there, I want to hear about it.
Are they concerned at all about the fact that there's been a change in the chair and we've had a hearty conversation about prime soils and that the vote on a resolution might not meet a
Might go the other
supermajority
way,
in the
yeah.
future?
No, they were here for the original meeting where Mead Road, where you approved Mead Road. Their
And
council was here.
And they know that people were reluctant in
Yeah, they know.
signing Mead Road, and we hadn't had as robust a conversation about prime soils and things at that time that we've had since that time.
I challenged them yesterday. Do you really want to do this? And I challenged them on the 28th because that was the day before the statute of limitations was going to run. And I had a conversation with them, and they said, well, look, we may have to file our own Article 78 on the decision that was made. And I said, okay, well, that's stupid. Why don't we have a discussion about your changes? I will take those changes to the board.
What's in Article 78?
That's the challenge, that it was arbitrary and capricious.
That we
goes-
voted yes to them,
That we,
and it was
yeah,
arbitrary.
They actually
that we
threatened,
approve the.
they actually threatened to sue on your decision to say yes. So,
If you show us changes, can we accept some of them and not others?
yes, yes, you can.
Because, I mean, maybe some of the wording changes.
And
Would be
you know, and
appropriate,
the
but-
statute of limitations issue
Rest
is,
of it,
it's one of the counterweights to that.
right?
But in my mind, I want the best possible work product from this process that we can get, the most defensible work product that we
So
can get.
I mean, the only thing that I've heard that's of any benefit to us is covering our butts with the special use permit. So if Betsy's, you know, as Betsy asked,
That's
if we
what I
can
was
approve
thinking.
one change and not approve, because I'm absolutely against them monitoring themselves, that,
Well, let's do this. Let's work with the actual document. They're gonna send me
Okay.
their proposed changes. I'll put them on the table for you.
okay,
We'll go through them one by one
Okay, good.
and make decisions,
I like that.
okay? So now you know kind of the overarching picture. Nobody sued us. Neither the applicant nor the neighbors, nobody sued us.
That's a good thing.
So I'm wondering if whether there was just a whole lot of puffing and
Mhm.
not a whole lot of interest in really causing us a headache. Okay, I got time. This has been a great discussion. The detail I wanted to go through with each one of these things, I don't think it's necessary. I think you did a great job in every one of them. Mead Road is up in the air right now because of this discussion I'm having with their council.
The only problem with these, I think, some of them, I don't remember which ones, you'd have to go through who signed what. I think there was a couple of voting members missing and a couple of alternates voted. I think that could be the issue.
Well, let's go through and do that, okay? That's Mead Road. So
As for
let's start
process.
The
with,
thing is, at this point, if the time frame is elapsed,
Yeah.
Right, well,
Let's just
fine.
let it go.
and they're happy,
Yeah. I'm just saying that
yeah.
would
Well,
be
we're
the issue.
gonna
Just
have
to
them,
Judson it.
we're gonna have it right.
That's pretty simple business to appoint the
Yeah.
alternate to be a voting member. It's just a,
Yeah.
it's just.
It just has to be remembered to be done.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's just.
all right, so I have,
And it's the same thing, Bill, I hope you don't mind me interrupting.
No, go
It's the
ahead.
same thing with the Zoom meeting, stuff. If one of us comes on the Zoom meeting, we have to be recognized, as there, and we have to be able to be seen, your face, and then you have to be recognized as being able to vote, if we come in on a Zoom,
that's something that the town board did
as they just made a rule
Yeah,
about
we
it.
passed a law.
to allow,
Allow Zoom.
video
But
participation,
there
so.
needs to be a quorum in person
Hmm.
for someone on Zoom.
Okay.
And there needs to be a legitimate reason as to why someone's on Zoom,
Okay,
yeah.
so the one I have in front of me is, Grass River. So Deborah Backus voted. William Myers was absent. Siggy Barr voted. Betsy Hodge voted. John Casserly voted.
There you
Eric
go.
Barr was absent, and Ian did not vote. So how do we feel about that in terms of the quorum requirement?
Well,
You
we
had
all- we
four
all
full
bucked up here
members,
'cause
but-
Ziggy might have been an alternate in that one.
That's what I was just thinking, what was the time frame on the transition?
No.
No,
No,
I think,
she was
I think
full.
you were an alternate.
I
at that
was an
time.
alternate.
When I was still an alternate at
Yeah.
that point, because for all intents and purposes, Ziggy and I have swapped
Switched.
places.
Correct.
So we have 4 votes. Supermajority, people that were present and were qualified to vote. So that's a good resolution. That's the analysis. So, that was the one that was a little concerning to me because their council actually brought it up. I have the Mead Road here in front of me, the old one, and Deborah, William,
I was gonna
Siggy,
say all of us were
Betsy,
there.
John, Eric, and Ian. Everybody voted on on that one. So you certainly have a supermajority there of the regular board members. So I'm not proposing any changes to any of the things that you've done except for Mead Road. And I'll come back to you next week or whenever the next meeting is, and we'll see how that goes. I wasn't sure on status, and Mike's gonna help me with this, for Soul America's North Woods project. That hasn't even really moved, has
I
it?
spoke to,
Meeting in the
Tony?
DEC.
no, not Tony, the developer, Joseph. They are still working through the mitigation issues with the DEC.
And what's that over? Remind us. What's
That's
that
the
over?
Northern Harrier and the Wren.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
okay.
That's the one where they said, we'll just wait them out.
Yeah.
And,
Well, there really are Harriers
But
there.
they did say at the meeting that they were gonna meet with them on Friday.
Yeah.
When we met with them on
Yeah,
Monday,
they met with
said
them and they have to come up with more.
yeah, I mean,
More
look,
details.
typically, you have to do a full-blown study on whether or not the birds are there, whether they're nesting. I mean, you can't
They're
just kind of walk away and wait for DEC to forget about it. I mean,
So they
that
stopped.
comment was absurd. So, that one,
From an environmental standpoint, though, if they agreed to only mow the place once every 3 years in the fall, if anything, it's going to improve habitat for both of the species of birds.
But they have to prove that to the DEC.
they have to get DEC to sign off on an Endangered Species Act issue.
If they have to prove it, then the
Not prove it, but they've gotta give them the plan.
Okay.
Give
Oh.
'em the whole-
Yeah, there's a full-blown study that they have to get approved before it ever comes to you.
Yeah.
So that's,
Wow.
God bless DEC, that's their business. Forefront Power, that's, something
that
that,
Nickerson Road?
Nickerson Road.
yeah. Now that, they don't have a complete application for that
They
yet.
do not, well, two hiccups. They don't have a complete, application with visual impact and noise study. And the second hiccup is, we were supposed to have a meeting on the 9th, public hearing. Unfortunately, we need to postpone that. We did not advertise for the public hearing, so there's no meeting the 9th. And with that said, let's look at the calendar and get one scheduled, so we can get it advertised, please.
And that's,
We don't have to do that right now, but
okay.
I just wanna get, so,
And that's to go over part 2 and 3.
that's
We
to
already
go
did-
over public hearing. If they don't get the visual impact or
Yeah.
the noise study, there's no sense of doing part 2 or 3.
Okay, oh, right. But that's what we scheduled on Monday to do, part 2
Right,
and 3.
but we didn't get it. Cause,
Okay,
you know,
'cause they did the
holidays,
noise. All right.
And then there's Old DeKalb Road.
that one's scheduled for January 19th.
Ooh, I will not be here that night.
And that's a public hearing for that
That's a
one.
public hearing.
It's 2 weeks from now. I'll be available. Public
That-
hearing for Old DeKalb Road?
Yeah.
That one's a bedrock.
Now, for public hearings, is that just for the project itself from the special use permit requirements or for seeker? Is it doubled up?
Double up.
Ooh, nice work.
And the public hearings, basically just to give the public an opportunity, and it's always a question in my mind, how much back and forth there ought to be. Look at the last one. I offered some thoughts. Like, for example, why do we call it community solar? Well, because it was created by the Public Service Commission and they called it community solar. So, I mean, to me, that seemed like a pretty innocuous, that's the history of it. That's how it happened. So, I don't know, Mary Ann, you've probably done 100 public hearings. It's better to let the public speak, but when they stand up and say, we don't know anything about this, it's hard to just sit there and say, well,
Too bad.
I always feel like a little bit of engagement might help with the process, but where do you draw the lines?
Right.
So it's difficult.
And that's the question I have for you, like the one, I think it's the one you're talking about, where a majority of the crowd was there about Rich Road,
Right.
and we're not dealing with Rich Road.
And that was stated at the beginning of the meeting.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
Debbie
I
said
know,
it.
but it didn't stop the
No.
crowd from
No.
wanting to talk about Rich Road.
It's the elephant in the room. And-
It'll be interesting to see if they show up for the old DeKalb Road project, which is off in the corner of the town and a road that nobody travels on.
The other question I
It's
had,
not prime soil.
and
Can we-
this one's
before you ask
off
this question,
topic.
can we
Yep.
stay on a public hearing for
Sure.
a minute? Just because Ian and I had a disagreement over this. Ian looked at this as, you know, people, it was too much. And I thought it was good. I thought people got out everything out. I mean, I don't think there was a question that wasn't asked of all the people there. That was my interpretation. People got to ask everything they wanted to ask. Debbie's tried to, you know, say, no, we're only, but it went, you know, we allowed it to go. And I thought that was good.
They got to say what they,
I thought it was
agree
good.
with, it was good in that point, John.
Yep.
But it was the fact of when one said something, this person remembered to say something, should this person stood back up and
It still was good, Bill. Mike,
That's
it
just-
still was good. It
you
still
got
was
your
good.
3 minutes, your 3 minutes.
Yeah.
I know, but holy mackerels, why have a time clock on this?
Because we'll be there all night.
I didn't
What's
think it
what's
was
the matter with
bad. I
being all
just
night?
wondered if there was a way to wrangle it and say,
Because
we're not
Well,
dealing
we're
with Rich
talking
Road.
about this
Right.
today.
We're not
Or
talking, that's,
the- I
that's
mean,
not
the le-
what we're here to meet about.
But we're not the enemies of the state here.
Yeah.
Right, but the
we're
level
to
of
hear the
misinformation in
public
that
say.
room, like
Yeah.
it was not the time and the place to try to educate the public.
But where does the public get a chance to say what they want to say?
I think they said it the week before at our board meeting.
Yeah.
And I had to cut it off at an hour
Okay.
because it was becoming
Uh-huh.
redundant.
Okay, so redundancy
And
is
the way
a
we do
factor?
it at our board meeting, public hearing, we're here to listen. It's
Mhm.
not a back and forth
Right.
unless the board agrees as the board that we answer some of their questions, right?
Mhm.
Because after an hour, they're like, it's about time, Mary, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And because it is about educating the public, but it's about the public educating themselves too,
Mhm.
you know?
But they didn't
And as
seem to
soon-
know
as
where
soon
to
as you go
educate
down
themselves.
down the
Yeah.
road of, here's some information for you,
Well,
Yeah,
it generates 5 more questions.
Right.
but that was an issue itself, information.
Yep.
right.
And
I don't
not
disagree
not
with
having
that.
access to
Yeah.
information, remember?
Mhm.
And I agreed with that.
But your role is clear, right?
Right.
As far as, like, if you're having a public hearing on one agenda item, you know, do you allow for other stuff to come in? And that's up to you
That's the
guys,
question.
whether you
But we're
wanna-
not addressing the issue of information. We haven't addressed that yet.
But the public hearing was for a specific project.
Right, but,
Yeah.
well.
The public has some responsibility on their own part, though,
It's on the website.
to look for the information if
If
they
you
want
have
to know.
something's coming up to look at the website.
Hey, you go on the Town of Canton website, boom, right there at the top,
Yeah, it's there. I
solar
mean,
information.
Which is down now, we're having major problems with our website.
Yeah,
Oh,
but
no.
still, the,
Yeah,
Well, and
it is hard.
And I think with my discussions with the board solar committee, that we thought that using the town's website as a way to disseminate information might be a good idea. So I've put pen to paper, I've drafted some things, that can continue to try to educate people. But Rich Road is such a major change that I'm not sure any amount of education is going to satisfy the demand. And we've got a fight on our hands with Rich Road. And as I said in the beginning, I'm looking for a little grain
Oh,
of
right.
anything I can find to try to put forward on behalf of the town on Rich Road, because it's a steamroller. And the way that process works is that we make our comments on their application. We might disagree, probably, on certain things, and there's an administrative phase where we go in front of an ALJ and we argue what we're going to argue. The ALJ makes a decision, and then the siting board can approve the project. We don't like what the siting board does, or we don't like what the ALJ does, we can go to court on an Article 78. Is it arbitrary and capricious that they made that decision? So it all kind of comes back around. So we need to have legitimate grievances and legal issues if Rich Road is going to be changed in any way, shape, or form. And it's my job to find those issues and to put them forward. And your help is greatly appreciated on
But
any
I'm
ideas
saying,
you might have.
If we can't find, if we can find a herring and a wren in the corner of a field on 38, there's no endangered species in that 1,700 acres.
I've seen
They have
eagles
to
over
do.
there.
They have to do an
There's eagles over
If
there.
you think about the environmental conservation law, which it has all these different articles in it. There's fish and wildlife. There's hazardous waste. Blah blah blah. The whole thing. They have to essentially touch each one of those issues and do a disclosure on that issue. So there'll be an endangered species section. There'll be a prime soils section. There'll be an agricultural impact section. There'll be a roads and bridges section. They have to do all that analysis. And one of their first meetings, the whole room was full of their consultants. Everybody's got their issue. Visual impact. There are only a few things that are going to rise to the level where we'll even be able to get an adjudicatory hearing.
Has there been any Article 78s on just the sheer size of it?
No.
And we're early in that, though. There
The
hasn't
one,
been
the one successful thing that's happened is that they tried to develop too much wetland. That's Brazier Falls.
Oh, yeah.
Too much wetland. And the answer from the siting board was, all right, well, just make it smaller. Stay out of the wetland. So the siting board is not going to say no. They're going to say, how can you mitigate that? So, for example, the prime soils argument, let's say that I'm successful with that argument, they may say, well, wherever there's prime soils, you can't put solar panels. That still leaves you with a big project because there's not that much prime soil in Canton.
Right there. Yep.
So, I'm sorry, I've been...
Well, it's the same question I've had for a long time. In the new proposed town code, or the one being discussed, there's an idea, or possibly a recommendation, to limit the amount of solar we can have in the town, either to a certain number of acres or a certain percentage of acres. Is that even legal in New York State? Are we going to be violating some, rule at the New York State level of you can't stand in the way of green energy?
You can have a comprehensive plan that says this is where solar should go. Let's use a different example. Strip clubs. Okay, you can have a comprehensive plan that says there's no strip clubs in downtown. They got to be out on Route 57. But you can't say you can't ever have a strip club. You just gotta. Where is it most appropriate?
Well, what if there's 10 strip clubs and we say we don't want 11?
You can say it's.
And see, I think that's more what we're talking about with solar is you can have solar, but only this much.
Two things.
You can't have 11 solars or
Two
13
things.
solars.
Practically speaking, one of the first things I did is I pulled up the hosting map, which shows how much capacity is left on the grid in Canton,
I remember that conversation.
and it's used. So there aren't going to be. This is it. There aren't going to be any
I
more
hope you're
community
right.
solar.
But with that though, I'm totally follow you 100%. However, developers can band together and share those upgrade costs to improve substations, three-phase lines as well. So it's not as dead as I think we'd like to believe. That's its own limiting factor, which is nice. However, there is opportunity out there as well for them to share those costs.
I've seen the cost for the VDO upgrade,
Mm-hmm.
and for a small substation, it was $700,000. So, because landfill gas project generated 1 megawatt, I had 4 other solar projects around the landfill, and the National Grid came back and said, no, you gotta pay $700,000 to upgrade our substation. We're a county government. We went to our legislator. They came down on National Grid, and they dropped the requirement. So, I mean, there are ways.
Agreed, for sure.
There are ways to make more happen. So I shouldn't be absolute about that, but those are big numbers. Those are big numbers. Now, maybe when you think about that, there's also a fortune in the infrastructure bill for improving the grid. And it's going to take billions to improve the grid. And will it come here, or will it be in more populated places? I don't know. So I think that for the time being, I don't think you're going to see any more applications.
To your question though, on limiting via size or percentage, in our current zoning regs, we have minimum lot size, right? Minimum lot size, but the amount of area that can be developed per a lot, I believe. So there's a marker on that.
Like a percentage?
Yeah.
Okay.
Density.
Yeah. So could that
Density.
who's this,
So-
that could apply to solar as well to a degree?
Yes, the answer to, yes, you can do that. At this stage of the game, I think we've missed the boat. Okay? Second, it doesn't do anything for Rich Road. No matter what you do, it doesn't do anything for Rich Road. That's been completely, you are entirely preempted as a town. It's only the siting board that can make those decisions. And why did they do that?
Because they knew people were gonna be upset.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
who's representative on this siting board?
The DEC, the Public Service Commission, the PSC, there's 10, I think. And they're all the heads of New York State agencies.
Nobody local.
Appointees.
No.
We tried.
There are 3.
We tried to get a local, because the
How
town
does it-
supervisor and the county administrator had the power to nominate someone,
Yeah.
but they totally blew us off. So, we tried to get at the table at the state level, and
Well, and the reasons are very clear in the law.
Did you watch the video of the court session
Yeah,
with
there
the
was-
one
Yes.
from
yes,
Western New York?
I did.
Canton's completely toast. There's no point to us even challenging the thing.
Yeah.
Because every issue that they had out there, it sounded like they were describing Canton. And
You just wiped it away.
But the project in Messina was denied. By
yeah,
the
but
zoning
that,
board.
Oh,
It
it
was
was
the wetlands.
shrunk.
but that,
So there's
and it was still denied.
room
But
for
this project doesn't have all those wetlands that they were trying to put it on in the town of Brazier.
There was a different setup too. It's not this one, this setup. It's a different one. It was the one prior to this, I think.
What do you mean?
There have been very few that have gone through
This setup.
as 94C, but 94C is on top of major power plants generally, 25 megawatts and up. And so there's a whole body of law for coal-fired plants, for nuclear plants, etc. And it's all set up because the priority is we need to make power, we need to make clean power, and the objections that we have are secondary. And that's just the truth, is that they've, by policy, said,
It's always been.
you know, that we have clean power is more important than what happens to your community. Now, that in and of itself is an argument that we'll raise.
They
But
should put
it's
it in
not-
Central Park.
It's not.
I know you gotta go, Bill, but would you, I wanted to ask one more question.
What's yours?
I wanted to ask
Was
him
it
about
last
how
year's?
we can talk to each other.
Each
What's the
21?
rules on,
Oh,
what's the rules on
That's a
getting
That's a,
good
together?
that's a fat finger thing. I'm not
Yours
stuck
is better
in
than
mine.
mine.
I
Bill,
gotta go,
on the
everybody.
way out, can you just whisper to us what our rules are with talking to each other? Can we call each other on the phone and talk?
You can do anything you want as long as it's not a quorum.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Because we were under the impression that it all had to be like official meeting for us to discuss anything.
If you are a quorum and you're sitting at the restaurant, don't talk business.
Okay.
If
and a
it's
quorum is only 3. So that means 2 of us can talk, but that's it.
Well, how about our emails that are,
Can we
There's
email each
6 or
other?
7
We
of
wanna
us
do
and
that?
we're
Don't hit
discussing
reply
stuff.
all.
a quorum is present at a public meeting.
Okay.
So an email is not a public meeting.
Because we
So
do
we can talk
discuss
to each
stuff.
other by email.
But everything that you write on your email and you use your Canton
Foilable.
email is foilable.
Okay.
So it's not a good idea.
So telephone calls are better.
Yeah, I mean, meet at the bar if you have to. But
I've heard from one of my own personal attorneys, plausible deniability.
That's a good phrase.
Those
you, Bill.
Famous words.
Bill,
Thank you,
thank you.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Good to
and-
see you.
And when
Glad
you
you are a
have, when
lawyer.
you have a question or you'd like me to be here, just, I'm happy to be here, except in the winter. It's not winter right now.
Right.
I can always be on the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
So please, I'm here for you. Whatever you need from me, I'm happy to give it. And thank you so much for all of your hard work. You've done a great job. I guess that's my message. I was looking for nits to pick, didn't find any. So
Okay.
with Mead Road, we'll have another discussion. So gotta go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Bill.
you, everybody.
Take care.
Thanks,
Just give
Bill.
those to Mr. Smith.
Yeah,
Bill.
good luck with that next
All right.
one.
Yeah.
I
So,
just pointed out to him that, on the agenda, it says 21.
I changed mine.
So everybody needs to change that, and I asked him to resend it with the proper year.
I changed.
Yeah, this says 23.
mine says 23.
Yours says 23, the one that was just
Mine
sent.
says 21. This
Mine
one
said
says
20.
Because the one I sent to
What
the
do you
board
email?
members,
Yeah.
I changed the date on it and sent it.
Oh, you did? All right.
Oh,
I guess I
the
didn't-
original one from Bill,
I guess
said
I
said
didn't get that
21.
one. Okay.
so this is why you get paid the big money.
Yeah. So anyway, get your calendars out. So we can
I
get
forgot it, but whatever.
Nickerson Road rescheduled.
Yep.
Mike, can you remind me, the regular monthly meeting for the planning board is when?
Who knows?
We
got
We
this
don't-
meeting
we don't
whenever.
have a-
Ah, gotcha.
How can
It
someone
meetings
make
as
this
Yeah.
meeting
3
on
times.
Nickerson
6
Road?
o'clock,
We don't have all
sometimes
this
3
stuff
When-
times a week.
When can it be ready? In terms of,
Well, the public hearing, we can get the public hearing done, and if they don't have the stuff for seeker part 2 and 3, just like 310, we just have to have another meeting.
Okay.
okay.
We just want to get the public hearing portion done
Okay.
after I send out all the notices.
So
But
it's
don't we
got to
need
be
a
after
lead
the
time,
night.
right?
What's that, ma'am?
We need a lead time because it has to be advertised for.
Yeah, we need 10 days.
Okay.
Do you want to try to do it as soon as 2 weeks from, or 1 week from next Monday? That would be the 16th, or is that too soon?
You know, it's-
It
Not-
must be
not
Martin
doable.
Luther King Day. I don't know if that
Question,
matters.
Chair. On the meeting itself, why not set a monthly meeting and the developers and applicants work around that?
So we said we weren't gonna only deal with one project.
we're
at a
only
Yeah,
dealing
we've
with
had
one
the-
project.
Yeah, we can't handle more than one of them at a time.
Unless you want to be here till midnight.
Well, therefore, wouldn't they have to fall in line with that regularly scheduled monthly meeting? We can only handle this one here. You gotta wait till next month.
We
Well, they have
wish.
been following a line. We
Yeah.
have been scheduling them. They've been fine with the schedules.
Right, but you're having multiple meetings a month,
Yeah,
A
so
week?
a week. Ooh,
Yeah, we had 1 week, we met
3
Three
times.
3 times in a week, in 4 and 8 days.
I don't know how common that is outside of a planning board having.
We just want, it's just to get them done.
I'm with you. What's the rush?
Well, at that time, we were trying to do as many as possible before Debbie left.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like this
Throw-
month,
throw
we
that
only
out.
had 2. We only had 2 scheduled, the 9th and the 19th.
Our job that way is way easier at this point, because we've only got 3 left to deal with, and one of them, until they get a go-ahead from DEC, one of them's dead in the water. So we'll have much easier time fitting stuff in now.
That's I'm throwing that out there.
I understand. I would like to get these through so we can get back to when we were
Then we
meeting
can get back
monthly
to
if
Wednesday.
needed.
I was
Bring
hoping,
signage and things. That'd be really.
I've got an ulterior motive, but I'd like to have them done before the end of February.
I don't think
Yeah, it doesn't sound very promising.
So
but-
we didn't say it, Ian.
we didn't come
I
up
just-
with a date for Nickerson Road yet.
What's realistic, Mike?
After the
Well,
19th?
What's that, sir?
Are we after the 19th? We have a
We have one on the
Old
23rd.
DeKalb Road on the 19th.
I was
Oh,
gonna
the
say
19th.
I can't do. If you need 10 days, I'm the 9th and the 10th next week. And then.
Oh,
we're
we
out.
won't get it advertised until
Right.
early next week.
But I'm saying I'm looking at 23rd, 24th for availability.
Okay.
Tuesdays are better than Mondays for me. So Monday's first day of classes. Sorry.
Okay.
So you're saying 24th.
I'm saying 24th or 26th.
No,
26
I
would be
can't
better
do-
for me.
not available.
I
on the
can't do any
26th, but-
Thursdays for the
What's-
next
okay.
6
Is the 24th good
Thursdays.
for you?
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
teaching
I
a
can do
class.
Okay, is 24th good for you? That would be
24th
Tuesday.
is good.
What day is that, Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday, the 24th of January at 6 o'clock.
Okay.
And that's Nickerson public hearing,
Yep.
possibly seeker.
Possibly part 2 and 3.
But that means we usually do the resolution then too.
We do,
Right.
we
Yeah,
can.
so if we could get that ahead of time
Yeah.
so that they can do their back and forth.
Their whole B&L's whole email system's down.
Oh gee,
Is it really?
Like down, like
For the count?
that's not good.
So that DEC guidance document, does everybody have that? You know, that Debbie would take out?
The seeker guidance?
Yes.
I don't.
I don't either.
It's
Can we get-
online.
How do
I
you get,
figured
how do
it
you get
was.
to it?
I can get it for you.
Will you print me out a copy?
Or
print
send
it
us
for
a link
everybody?
if you.
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
send
I'd
you a
look
link.
at
Send
it
us
on
all a
the-
link,
that'd
that
be
would be
nice,
helpful.
Mike, thanks.
Yeah, because it's quite a few pages.
We probably
Yeah.
ought to have a paper copy at the meeting though, so we
Great.
can look up
Okay.
and read it out.
Mhm.
Or
Agreed.
bring my laptop, I could do that too. If I can
So
get
do
on
we
the
want to
Wi-Fi.
talk a little bit about the 310 project? Does anybody want to talk about it at all? Can we talk about it? Are we allowed to? Maybe we
we're-
can't.
and-
We have, maybe, can we talk about it?
It's on the record, right?
Well, there's
If you
nobody.
add it to the agenda, then it'd be documented, like you can propose to add it to the agenda and then.
But we're
some-
not keeping minutes.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
It's
Yeah.
recording.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm fine. I propose, I make a motion, we, open up a little discussion on Route 310 project.
You're adding that to the agenda.
Yes,
I can second that.
thank you.
Then Ian, you just take a vote.
Yeah.
Just say all in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed?
Yes, you need to ask that too.
Well, I think the first thing we could think about is the comprehensive plan, and the village came to the public hearing and spoke, but they didn't, in my estimation, they didn't seem to make a really good argument, other than the infrastructure, the village infrastructure is right to that point, and there could be a better use of the land rather than solar. And it has a big access area too, which separates it from, say, Judson Street Road, which is not visible at all, basically. Route 11 is barely, from Ian's house, Ian's gonna be able to see it, but somebody coming by on Route 11 maybe can, by the time the vegetation grows, I
Mhm.
mean, it's probably
could
will
see it,
melt
but you'd
in
have to
pretty
look
good,
for it,
you know, I mean, that's, I think.
What was that?
You could see it, but you'd have to look for it.
Yeah, I
It's
think
not-
that's how
Yeah.
we felt about it. But this one is different.
Yeah, the potential visual impact is significant. No doubt about that. There's a good reference if you want go in the village of Potsdam, just past the elementary school.
Mhm.
I think it's in the village boundary still. They just installed a solar installation, no vegetative screening. It's unsightly.
And the
But it's
county,
permitted
and the
use.
county approved that one.
Yes, they did.
Because it was prior to 22.
Well, they approved it with no buffering, no screening,
No nothing.
no nothing.
Oh, boy.
Are you
And
100% certain on that?
Did their town
Yes,
do
I
it?
have, yes.
That one's not overly residential though, right?
It's right beside the school,
Oh,
right
the
between
school.
right
Yeah.
between the housing and the school. It's,
And they had no planning board, Potsdam Planning Board review of that?
Yep.
They did have.
They did, and they didn't have a solar law either
they didn't have.
at the time.
See, the idea with the comprehensive plan, the village's comprehensive plan and the town's comprehensive plan, the village hypothetically in their comprehensive plan said they would like to extend 310 for more commercial use, so on and so forth. But then in the town's comprehensive plan, it says the use of rural land for solar installation, and so it's kind of too contradicting. So-
Contradicts, right? That's what I thought.
The whole thing is a moot point unless the DEC lets them do it.
Right, I mean,
Yeah.
You know, that's,
Well, let's assume this DEC says okay, then it comes to us. So we're looking good. We're okay. We're not gonna.
Well,
I don't
I've
think
always,
it's-
you know, the aesthetic part of the seeker has always been subjective to me. Like, you know, with the hill and the Mead Road, you know, I don't think you're ever going to screen that.
No.
You know, you know, that's why I felt good about Judson Street Road. It's set
Mhm.
back. It's already got partial
oh, yeah,
screening.
beautiful site.
You know, the Route 11 down, you know, off the road. I've never liked 310. I don't like Nickerson Road. You know, Nickerson Road, maybe after time it's flat enough, you know, you will get the visual screening. But I mean, at what point are we able to say aesthetically you can't screen that? So that's a no for us. That's always been a question.
But then
for
they,
me.
then they flipped it, you know, they have United Helpers supporting the project.
Right.
Right.
And it's right beside it.
Right.
I mean, I know there's
No, oh, I'm sure.
involved.
Right, but I mean, that doesn't cover 310. You know, that's the traffic on 310. You know, there's all sorts of new houses popping up. You know, on the east side of 310 there.
Yeah, so would I rather have a solar farm or houses in my neighborhood?
But the people
I'd rather have a
on
solar.
What are you
the
talking
neighborhood, some came. And they didn't say much.
No,
at 310?
a couple of them you supported it.
And the,
Yeah.
and the fact of expansion on that, they have a main gas line going through it.
Mhm.
Two main, so I mean, it's,
There's the Iroquois one, and the one that went to the
They both go
cogeneration
through
plant.
oh, okay.
That's
Mm.
right along the highway.
Oh, good to hear your thoughts.
But remember, as a board, you don't have to say yes. You can say no. You don't have to, it is what it is. I mean, if three of you agree yes and one agrees no, it
But again, that arbitrary and capricious.
Yeah.
You
I
know,
know.
with the aesthetic. You know, my aesthetic versus your aesthetic. You know, that's always going to be a subjective argument. You know, so that's where I found a little solace in the fact that we're, you know, it's the process. You know, we're trying to take that subjective nature out, that emotion out, and say, okay, yes, it does. Whether I like it or not, it meets these criteria.
Well, what did we get from the absolute neighbor, Joel Howie? What did we get from him? Remind me.
Unfortunately, I wasn't there.
Oh, okay.
we didn't get really,
What did we? He has a
didn't really say
gigantic.
anything.
He has a gigantic. His whole property line is the project.
and I don't remember him saying anything.
He asked
He
if there was
said
gonna be,
something.
buffer there.
Buffer.
Yeah,
And it won't affect him, it's more likely to affect the Hazes across the road that are looking.
and they came
'Cause-
too.
Down on
They
it.
said- They talked.
Because Joel Howie actually lives
kind of
at the
below it.
opposite end of his property. And I don't know if
That's not his house right on the road.
He's right on
Right
310.
next to it.
he lives on 310, but
Yeah.
it's,
Down past his apple place.
yeah,
Oh,
on the other side of
Oh.
where the apples currently are planted. And he's going to plant more apples, including the little piece of prime ag ground that's on the front of this parcel
oh,
that they're not using for solar. I
that's
have
the deal he made with the company.
no
The person owns the land.
Oh,
with Curtis.
North
oh,
Curtis.
that's right. Okay. Shoot, Ian, good stuff.
No, it's,
It's a case of who do you know and talk to.
Yeah, what he said
I
to me
know
is
all
he would
those
rather
people.
see these solar things go over parking lots and buildings that are already there than on the land. This is Joel, I mean, in reality.
Most of us would.
So what if all the neighbors came and were really upset about it? Would that affect us?
Isn't that what happened at the Mead Road?
I don't
The
know.
one
Yeah,
neighbor.
except there's only
I-
one
I
neighbor.
wouldn't. I didn't get affected by the neighborhood, by the Mead Road.
Remember, we're thinking about the future too.
And now the neighbors are
Planning.
trying to renegotiate there and allow them to come through their property for highway access
Get more, yeah, get their money.
to get the money.
Who's this?
So
The
is
neighbor
that
of
is that
the Mead
fact
Road?
though, or is that more hearsay?
I have
rumors
that
spread.
from reliable source.
Wait.
Will it happen? Beats me.
Okay, go back to my question though, does the neighborhood affect our choice or our decision? If we're not gonna be arbitrary and capricious, I love that word.
Well, I don't think it can, you know.
It's not supposed to
Yeah, it's
affect
It's
kinda
us.
not supposed to.
It's supposed to
Yeah.
go by the rules.
Right.
Right.
Which is, like I said, that's the only reason, you know, that I could.
So then
Why
what's
do-
the
why do we
purpose
have
of
a
a public
pub- yeah, I was
hearing
gonna
and
say, why
people
do we
come
have
and
a public
expressing
hearing?
their opinion if we're not gonna take it in?
Well, that they may raise an issue that we haven't discussed.
Ah,
Or
good
they
point.
may bring new information that we
Exactly.
weren't
And they
aware
get
of.
to meet with the developer.
Yeah, that was another thing at the public meeting that I thought would was really facilitate good relations, that they could ask the developer a question. I
That-
kind of like that.
that's-
I know you'd have different opinions on it, but I
No,
thought that
no,
was pretty cool.
what I'm saying,
And they
that's
were-
with the developer.
You like that?
You take case in point, I mean,
And they were more
to
interested.
go off the end was, over the weekend, I was contacted by an individual that lives on Old Route 11 about the Rich Road. So when I came in, whatever day it was, I emailed Jonathan, who's now the person for PDF, contacted him that day, plans on meeting him when he comes up the next week. That's what it is. It's the face-to-face contact with the
Okay.
people. And that's a good thing about the public hearing. You have the developer, you have the neighbor, they might have never met before. They can come to some sort of agreement.
If the
Are we okay with
developers
that
do
though?
what?
Are we okay with that? Because that wasn't how the meeting started. It was.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the purpose of the meeting.
The
even.
developer, Debbie threw out there that we weren't going to ask the developer. People weren't going to ask the developer questions, but the developer was more than willing to answer questions.
Well, I'm saying when they walk out the door. I'm not saying at the meeting.
As
If
far
the-
as the decision, making, I think I still feel safest just holding right to the law. And that was some of my question asking tonight. It was, okay, if the code changes and the law changes, then, we have something to sink our teeth into in saying no. But if they've jumped through all the hoops, they've dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's, I'm not sure we have a foot to stand on to decline something when they've done all that. So it makes me wonder how it is the county's gotten by with approving everything in 20 and 21 and then just flipping a switch without something.
Well, they know we can change. I mean, they have
So-
that
so
luxury of saying
what
no
do they know
because
that
they
we
know we
don't
can
know?
say yes.
Well, the county legislature in that case, they came around and issued this advisory directive to, there's a potential that prime farmland is going to get gobbled up here. We need to take a stand. So the county planning board falls in step. You could not that it wouldn't happen here, but the town board could hypothetically say, "Ooh, same thing's happened here. We need to adopt some sort of percentage or acreage allotment for this particular use," and therefore that could impact how the law is
And-
interpreted.
Then
And
we'd have
if we
something
had that,
to
we would
stand
have that
on.
to
Right,
stand on.
yeah.
But we don't have that.
Correct. Agreed.
And the projects we're looking at now essentially are already grandfathered into our process, and so
Correct.
we can't change the ground rules on them.
That's correct.
I just appreciate this discussion. I just love to hear all your thoughts. It makes it's good for me, because I want to be good at these meetings. I want to. I
No,
got
I
Jim
agree.
Curtis.
We haven't had an opportunity to sit and have a discussion.
I mean, I
like this.
think
It
it's
feels like it's
invaluable.
been boom, 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 and
But Debbie really told us that we couldn't do that, and I was
Right.
slightly disagreeing, but I didn't say much. Okay, so.
Can I just add a
soothes my
point?
soul.
You have 2 lawyers at your expense, right? Or at your, whenever I would encourage you for the solars to have Bill here because the developers are paying,
well, that's
that.
what
right?
John
been saying
reminded
right
us
along,
of
yeah.
earlier in the fall.
Yes, like, we have already spent $103,000 on legal fees and then Barton and LaJudas.
Mhm.
But it's the developer's money, right? I have the escrow money and
Mhm.
it's a lot. So I would encourage you
Okay.
to have him here because they're paying for it,
Mhm.
right? And then Eric Gustafson is our town attorney, so for other things, and he's at your disposal as well. So it would be the chairperson, you can call him anytime, right? And the town pays for that. you don't have to have our permission, but if if the board has a question, you would ask Ian to contact the attorney, and if you want Eric here, then you would request that too. So I wanna, point that out, that,
Is there a role that Eric would play that's different than Bill?
only in that Bill's our solar lawyer. Eric's our town attorney, so when you get back to
Oh,
other
to,
projects, right?
Okay.
But, Eric and,
The projects.
Bill communicate as well. As a matter of fact, they're all up at a meeting at the school. So, yeah, we're all in this together, but those are the resources that they know what they're doing, and their counsel is just,
And-
Bill's really good.
And
We're
the
so lucky to have him.
the contacts for Bill should go through me as chair and or Mike, or
Well, in my view, it's the collaboration of you and Mike, in that, you could say to Mike, well, will you contact Bill or whatever? But, but you would want the full planning board to know that, or agree, this is what you want us, cause that's what I do as the supervisor, is if the board wants something from the attorney, I contact the attorney and then bring it back. But they know what they're doing. He's unbelievable.
But you have to realize, you have to understand from my perspective, when I figured this out, or it was figured out for me, that Bill was our attorney, and we could talk to Bill anytime we wanted, basically, given time constraints or whatever. But I was getting the feeling from the rest of the board that we didn't wanna bother Bill, and we didn't wanna do any of that attorney stuff.
Well, the thing is, billable hours.
Yeah.
Right? So if you had a question of Bill, just a general question, the town taxpayers are paying for that. But if the board has, a question about a specific solar project, then he can bill that solar project through me. But, it really is the chairperson's, responsibility.
Well, I'm glad you're telling us all that.
Yeah.
so the bottom
It's
line
just
at
easier
this
for
point,
process, right? Yeah.
if you've got a question, Mike and I can make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I got the feeling before, like last year or the year before, that we didn't wanna include Bill in what we were doing.
I think
And
we
I was
were
saying
more
include
like,
him.
we were
No, I
more worried
remember.
about him
You know,
traveling, I think, at that
Don't
time.
worry about that. Don't worry about that. I mean, we have a retainer
But
with him.
but like, Mrs.
Now we can
Ashley,
zoom 'em in.
we wanna, we wanna do it on a project,
Right.
not, what
General.
if, like, the school board meeting tonight,
Yeah.
but we just we wanna do it on a project, we don't wanna just have something else involved, because we wanna
Try to
build
make it as specific as possible,
Possible,
If you
yeah.
could,
on
if you
a
could.
particular project.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cause
Yeah.
we can bill,
Because if we didn't have our law and had that escrow money, the town taxpayers would have already spent $103,000 that we don't have.
And then we wouldn't have been talking to Bill.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
I get that.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was looking for. I mean, most of our meetings have gone long, and as kind of a way to defend some of our positions, and it goes to information for the community. This community benefit agreement, that happens after the project's already approved. To me, that seems a little,
Backwards.
like we should be discussing community benefit before we approve the project.
That's not
Well,
our-
you might not approve it though. So then.
That's not our job.
Right.
Right.
But I mean,
I'm glad it's not.
no, and I'm in wholehearted agreement. But I mean, when it comes back to somebody that doesn't stand behind the approval of a project, what is one of those look like,
The community benefit.
Yeah.
we don't
And the
know.
pilot, right? So those are the
Uh-huh.
next two things
Right.
to be negotiated between the town board and the developer.
I mean, I don't need specific numbers, but I mean, does it boil down to a reduction in tax rate? Does it? What
Did
what
you
is?
just get your county tax bill?
Yeah.
Did it go down?
To
Should've.
be honest, I don't know.
So, yeah.
Well, not necessarily. If your assessment goes up, then it could negate
Mhm.
any sort of drop in tax.
My assessment stayed the same,
Mhm.
and I've got seven parcels of woods.
Mhm.
My tax went down on every one.
Okay. I mean, I've
Why?
got four
The
properties.
tax rate went down.
Why? The tax rate went down for the county.
But your assessment didn't change.
My assessment did not change.
So for us, for our
And
assessment
why
change,
did
we're
the
paying
but
more.
why did the county assessment or the county tax rate drop.
Right.
Is that
All
COVID money?
these solar projects in
Okay.
the county, and it's only going to get more. And if
Okay.
you put all these projects in the town of Canton, and if you put the Rich Road in,
Mhm.
our tax rate is going to crash.
No, that's awesome, and
That'd be
that's
too bad.
what I think people need
But the
to.
public doesn't even know and appreciate that.
But that's what I think needs to change.
But
you
how is
know?
how is the county not disseminating that information to the public? I don't think has anybody heard anything in relation to that?
If
from
I wasn't on the
legislators?
planning board, I'd never know.
They
Yeah,
just
I read
said
it
they
somewhere.
just said there was. I saw a
It
little
was a while
article
ago.
in the news that the county's tax rate was going down because of increased
Revenue.
total assessment value. And the tax rate per thousand went down. But where's the increased assessment value coming from in the county these days?
The only thing that's going up in assessment is residential and commercial properties. The solar
Solar.
project, yeah, but the pilot arrangement, they're not paying the amounts. This would be a good devil in the details here. They're not paying full
Tax rate.
assessment by any means.
Right.
It's that pilot
It's still
negotiation.
it's a significant amount of money.
See that the significant piece. If we can put down some numbers, I would totally agree with that. However, if there's no numbers to look at, we
But
could be
we
getting
can-
fleeced.
I can give you those numbers, Dakota, and
That-
you'd be shocked.
That
It's the
it's low,
the
right?
formula where the
It's the
schools
formula
gonna be the
was
bigger,
screwy.
the biggest
So
benefactors, then the county, and the town,
Gets
We're
hardly
here.
anything.
right.
and it's the formula
It's a formula.
for
Yeah, the county.
pilots.
Well, I tell you, I don't worry about seeing my property taxes. It's the school taxes that kick
They-
me in the teeth. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing is, any financial benefits of the three of us or the community benefit, we're still grappling with. Can we put that in our regular budget, or can we put it in like a capital improvement plan? Our roads,
Yeah,
it's
terrible.
bad.
Oh yeah.
And with these projects coming in, guess what? There's going to be so much damage. We can't keep up now.
Right.
Just with the KV line. Well, I
Right
call
with
it
Michael's.
KV line.
Yeah.
Our roads got so damaged,
Uh-huh.
and we're in trouble. We have 100 miles of roads, right? So
Well, I remember
we
when
have
the Main
to-
Street project and running everything up State
Right.
Street.
So say we get, my dream is 20 million,
Uh huh.
right? My dream is to maybe put that in for roads,
Uh huh.
right? But I don't know if we can put it in our regular budget and not go over the tax cap. But we can always override the tax cap by law. So it's that monster over there. But I can guarantee you that this town board is looking out for the benefit of the taxpayer. And
We
we're
appreciate
go,
that.
and I'm just speaking for myself. I don't want, one of the developers to say, "Oh, we'll put a little boat launch over here." I want money,
Right. Oh yeah.
so that this town.
Show me the money.
Right.
No,
Using
it's
our
true.
discretion
That's
and
fine.
Exactly, and so
where
you know,
we feel we need it.
exactly.
Yeah.
So do we decrease the taxes? We're so low on tax rate now that it's sad.
Uh huh.
It's sad, but we really in the last 5 years turned it around and kept the tax rate low.
But
But as
I'm
far as
just-
assessments, we need to do a full reevaluation
Hold on the ballgame.
of the entire town.
That should be fun.
And that's what we're going
Right.
for. And our assessor, she's been chomping at the bit for 3 years because we're so imbalanced
Oh, yeah.
on the rolls,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, it's awful.
So that's coming
Potsdam's
down the pipe
worse.
too. So we brought our assessor back full time this year because we got to get all that data. We have
Mhm.
like close to 3,000 parcels. We got to get all that data, and then we got to do a full reevaluation, and that's going to be not fun,
But
but it has to be done.
to
Yeah.
get the idea, Eric, of value of a host community grant and a pilot, just throwing it out there. Your board approved the Judson Street Road project in September. They're still negotiating the pilot and the host community benefit agreement
Sure.
Oh,
and
I
values.
believe it. Yeah. Yeah.
So like everything else, it's about the money.
How much is that project, roughly? Do you recall? Like 7 mil.
7 million.
So 7 mil on that parcel. That $7 million improvement does not get taxed like
That's
we
$7
get
million.
taxed at our.
But no,
No,
that's
that's not
not.
true
That's,
anymore.
That's not true.
that's not. It
Oh, from the recent from the town
Yeah.
board. But is that project grandfathered in because this was just recently passed
No.
though?
But not even that. A value gets put on that land
Sure, no doubt,
for improvement.
no doubt. But
So you're still you're improving the land. You're not putting the 7 million on there. You're putting however many acres times $5,000 an acre or whatever, or
Sure.
$10,000 an acre for the improvement. And developers pay that tax. The homeowner doesn't, but the developer does.
Right.
So I mean,
And
it's
our
it's
assessor
interesting how
has been
that-
learning all of this too at the same time,
no doubt.
right?
The way
and
the
the
state
state's
is
coming in and saying, you know,
yeah, it's just
it's so layered.
that's-
It's crazy.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just kind of fascinating. You know, on another commercial development in the town, I mean, there's the ability to negotiate pilots is definitely a well used tool in northern, probably statewide, in terms of how the IDA. It's pretty fascinating how some business owners in the community have structured these pilot arrangements essentially to keep the business in the community. It's I don't
an
pretend that it's an
incentive.
easy thing.
But
by
the,
any-
the I'm not throwing down the IDA. I'm not throwing down the county.
sure.
But with them structuring, they're getting this much percentage. The town's getting this much
Right.
percentage. If you flip flopped it, the town could be here, the county could be here. The school's always going to get here.
Right. Yeah. No,
That's
I
the
hear you.
thing. You know, the county. And I'm not.
And we did ask for a flip flop.
Right.
Are there any flip-flops anywhere else?
No,
They're all like this.
they're all like
yeah.
this.
Every county is dealing
The,
with
the
that
formula is
scheme.
pretty set.
What, 60% for the school,
And what's
what, 30% for the
It all
It's
goes by the
10%.
tax rate.
10%,
It
something
goes
like
by
that, something,
it's-
something like
Yeah.
that, right? That's
But we're
structure.
the low hanging.
Right.
But
yeah.
what's the justification for that? I mean, that they can move the money around, like that, you know, that the county as a whole.
No, it's just
That
the way
the
the
town
law's
gets
written.
some benefit
Oh.
from the county. And
Ah,
Yeah.
The way the
So-
law's
Already.
written.
gotcha.
You know, but the school can use that money to lower the school taxes, right? We could choose to do that
Uh-huh.
as well. But we also just passed a law to opt out
Right, right.
as a
Opt out.
tool to make it full taxable
Of the Rich Road.
No,
Silver,
that's
right?
of any of them.
of any.
The Rich Road, that's a state project and we don't know. I mean, we're lucky we're at the table with them in my view.
But I'm saying, so using roads as an example, though, I mean, you know, as long as the county used that money, you know, and put it into infrastructure, I mean, at least you could be like, okay, we're getting, you know, we drive on county roads all the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, having that out of the town's control,
Over time,
you know, there's
right.
no assurance that that is in fact where the money is going to be invested.
But for the Rich Road, there is a very large document on use of roads that we're negotiating, right?
Hmm.
Because we can't keep up with our transportation infrastructure.
The new solar assessment law that
Especially
recently
with weather.
passed at the town level would apply to potentially the Nickerson Road project because the application hasn't been submitted yet, right?
Right.
Oh, interesting.
Not completed.
Oh, but they're already in the door.
Yeah, they're already in the door.
See, and these are good questions if you'd have Bill here,
Sure.
that, you know. 'cause-
Well, and unfortunately, it was a time constraint. It was, you know, I
was,
said
yeah.
I saw Q&A on that was what I wanted to
Yeah.
talk about, and we unfortunately ran out of time.
He'll be
Does the
back.
town pay for Bill tonight? Or
Yeah,
it can't go up? Or can
yeah, we would be paying for his time tonight.
Because it wasn't a specific project.
Right. There is debate about whether, you know, he went over those
Main
projects,
road.
whether it depends on how he bills us. He might bill us,
he could
you
bill
know,
But
break it
why
down.
couldn't we argue that? Because we spent a significant amount of time talking about the Mead
Mead
Road
Road.
resolution.
yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
He's part of it. It was worth it anyways.
When I got that copy that he sent me Tuesday,
We're
I was
being
just like-
recorded, so I'll wait.
it was just,
No, but
Sure.
we could certainly ask him,
When?
are you gonna charge him on the main road? Yeah, it's,
I'm a fan of
yeah,
profanity.
it is. But you know, on behalf of the town board, we have appreciated everything you've done. This hasn't been easy. I equate this to a tsunami. This is our solar tsunami.
Mhm.
And it's been a year, and it's been
I
a lot
love
of
this
work.
room though, Mary Ann.
What?
I love this room, it's very comfortable.
Well,
You want a cot
I
in the
missed the
corner?
pictures.
Right.
There used to be
Right.
pictures in here.
Right.
Though.
Well, they're all
members.
down at 7 Main Street. The historian's office is now open. That was another. No,
That's
so-
where they
Hey,
went.
John, are you satisfied
I am.
with our discussion?
I am, thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I'll
I was
second.
just gonna ask for that.
Thank you,
I'll
Bill.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Good.
So we're only sitting one more.